Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Probably a little while ago you saw our video on the 2245, which it's a very nice target pistol from Ruger, useful for targets and varminting and things like that. And we'd mentioned we're going to do some upgrades to it. And none of the upgrades I'm going to show you today are necessary for it to function. This gun has functioned right out of the box. But most of these upgrades are to get rid of some nuisances. For example, the sights are blackout sights. So let me go through some of the things I'm going to put in. I've got a set of Williams fire sights, and these are fiber optic front and rear sights that'll make the sights a lot easier to see. And one thing that's important when you look at these Williams sights for the Rugers, you have to be careful if you get the right version. Notice these are for the sights with the eagle logo, and what that's referring to is if you look at the rear sight, there's a eagle logo stamped right here. The older sights didn't have the eagle logo, they were just plain. And it makes a difference because what's going to happen is we're not going to replace the entire sight assembly, we're just going to replace this blade. So this blade we're going to pop out, put in the fire sight blade, and if you don't get the right version then they won't install correctly. If you've got an older gun that doesn't have the eagle logo, then there's a different model number, and I'll put the two model numbers if they're available in the description of the video. So I've set aside the parts that aren't relevant to what we're doing right here. The sights are actually relatively easy to change. The first thing you might as well do is just get right down to removing the front sight. And there's one screw right here. Now it may have some thread locker on it, so it may be a little difficult to turn it initially. I did find with this particular one they had omitted the thread locker and the sight has a tendency to get loose, which I'm going to fix that when I put it back together. So I'm just going to remove the screw. And you do need to retain the screw, because this screw will be used to install the new sight. Pop the screw out. There's the old sight, which I'm going to set aside, and I had painted the white dot on it. It actually came as a blackout sight. And there's the screw that retained it in place, and we'll use that when we put the front sight on. One of the things I'm going to do with this though is I am going to put a drop of blue thread locker on it. Make sure you use blue, not the red. So there's the thread locker that was on it that had failed. Make sure you use the blue, not the red, because the red is permanent. You'll never be able to get it apart again. The blue can be taken apart relatively easy. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my thread locker over here, and I'm just going to put a drop on it. And if I get any excess, I'll just touch the paper towel to get it off. But I just really need a little bit of thread locker on the end of it. I don't need a huge pile of it. And what you'll see is on the end of the screw, and it's going to be real hard to see because it's black screw with blue thread locker, but there's a little bit of shiny on the end. See that shiny? That's the thread locker. And even though the tube is actually red, you'll see that they call it blue, and it's important that you use blue. Once I've got that, I just take the new sight and set it in position on the top of the barrel. I get the thing to set still, set it into position, drop the screw in. Let's see if I can get my fingers out of the way. And notice it's cockeyed at the moment. It's curved to match the barrel, so once I've got the screw in a few threads, as I turn it, it will straighten itself out and lock in place. Now this it is a steel screw, and it is an aluminum body, so don't over tighten the screw. Let the thread locker do the work of holding it in place. And already you can see how much brighter that sight is, and you can see what the dot's going to look like when I get the rear sight in place. So the next step is to do the rear sight. Now when you do the rear sight, we're going to take just the blade out, so we're going to remove this screw. So there's one thing you know is you're going to have to take it to the range and sight it back in. You can get it close by taking the screw that's on it right now, and every time you hear it turn, you hear a click. Okay, and you probably can't hear it on the camera. I'm sure the camera's not picking up the click, but you can feel it and you'll hear a little click. So if you count the clicks, screwing this all the way down, then when you put the new sight in, you can screw it down and count the clicks backwards and get a rough approximation of where you were. And I've already done that with this one, and it happens to be 15 clicks. So what you're going to want to do to take it off is you're going to want to hold the sight with your thumb or your finger, however you want to do it. And as you turn the screw, slowly let the sight come up to get the screwdriver in there. This is a little bit difficult trying to do it with the wrong hand so that I can show you on camera. But as you slowly turn it, let the sight come up with it. But don't let the sight and screw get too far apart from each other. Otherwise what will happen is the threads will catch in the sight and it'll kind of get cockeyed and you won't be able to get the screw the rest of the way out. And as you bring it up, you're going to hit a point where the screw starts to go tight. And that's where it's got a little bit of retention where it's trying to keep the screw in place. So you'll need to drive it out to the point it stops. And that will have the screw as loose as you're going to get before we pop out the next part of it. There's a little pin right here. You need the smallest punch you can get your hands on. This is a 1/16 inch punch and it's almost a hair too big. And there's a little pin we're just going to tap through. And you'll see the pin is starting to come out the other side, right there. And one thing you want to make sure is you have a good high quality punch set, because if you have poor quality punches and they bend, that'll make it even more difficult. But I've got the pin most of the way out and I pull it the rest of the way, and if you need to use a pair of pliers to grab a hold of it, give it a pull. Just be careful not to bend it. And you're going to need this pin, so set it aside. And then at this point you can then finish removing the screw, and there'll be quite a bit of resistance at this point. It's got a little bend at the end of it that is designed to keep the screw from coming out. Now I've got the blade loose, and don't lose that spring. That spring will be needed to put the new blade in. Now at this point, if the screw has threaded into the blade as part of removing it, you may need to pop it back down to free it up, because the screw has a little bit of play in it. But it'll sometimes have a tendency to go sideways when you're unscrewing it and kind of hang up. So I loosened it up, and then I'm going to end up having to back this screw out because I will need this screw to install the replacement blade. One other thing that's prone to happening is if the screw gets sideways at all, it won't want to come out. And one way to solve that is to set it on a flat surface. You can use your hammer, you can use an armorer's block, anything like that. And then you'll work the screw back and forth in the threads until you get it where it's not jamming, where it's not hanging up. And then you slowly be able to thread the screw out of the sight. So now I've got the screw out of the sight. So there's the old blade. And set that aside. And I'm going to need to put the screw into the new blade. Luckily, the new blade is open enough that the screw will just drop in. So now I'm going to take this new blade, I'm going to put the spring in there. The spring goes in this hole right here at the back. So put the spring in there. And then I'm just going to set the blade in and hold it down enough to get the screw into place. And it's real important not to cross thread it, so you may have to go back and forth a little bit. If it doesn't thread in easily, you've probably cross threaded it. Now I'm not going to tighten it all the way down. I want to leave a little bit of play because it's going to make it easier to push the pin back in if there's a little bit of play. I'm going to put the pin back in. I'm going to start just by pushing the pin in and lining it up till I get it where it's actually wanting to start going into the blade. And you may have to play with it a little bit. There it goes. I just wiggled it back and forth and I felt it go forward where it's wanting to go into the blade. And then you can take and tap it back into place and finish the job with a punch just to finish it. And it should auto align with the other side because of the way the blade sets up. If you get it through the first two, it'll usually pretty much just line up with the second one. So now the pin's all the way through, and now what I can do is hold the blade all the way down with my finger, run the screw down until it bottoms out, and then turn it back the number of clicks that I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That should put it roughly, at least get me on paper. It's not going to be accurate at this point because these sights are slightly different, but they should at least get me on paper. Then I can take it to the range and zero it. So changing out the sight's relatively easy. Biggest hassle is getting a punch that's small enough to fit through that hole. Well, I got it out to the range. Found out that the 15 click, doing the click counting, was pretty close. I had to tweak it just a hair to get it exactly in the bullseye, but it was much easier to see. You can see the sight picture here. And it made it a lot more fun to shoot when you don't have to concentrate to see the sights. You can just line it right up and see what you're doing. So please look forward to our another video where we do the lower modifications and get rid of the magazine disconnect and a few other annoyances. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and have a great day. Thank you.